I'm Carl Schofield, and I'm taking over for this part of our show.
Yeah, boy.
And
Yep.
the topic that I want to talk about most is identity. And the first question, we're going to go straight in. If your narrative of your life is someone who struggles with their speech, you're a stutterer, you are known by other people and yourself as someone who struggles with their speech and has a stutter, what happens when you start working on your speech? What happens to your identity? We're going in raw.
Yeah, well, like just to maybe start with, and then I'll probably come back and add at the end. I guess your identity changes, but it really depends on like the actions that you take, especially when like a person is by themselves or going about just everyday things. I think we talked about it earlier in terms of avoidances, because that's one of the big outcomes for stuttering. You avoid. So is your avoiding decreasing like to a good level, and are you now approaching things that you previously avoided? If you are, then that is straight away like an individual change. And then if you carry on doing that, it eventually becomes your like new current self.
But would that be hard if that's all you've known, is that you are a stutterer?
The thing is, I think it's all about the people who are around you when you're in a transition. It's all about the community, your family, your friends, or the people on the course you're on. They will determine how hard you struggle to change your identity. If they are accepting of you as a person who stutters versus a person who's stuttering and is working on your speech, if they are behaving the same way around you, then you should be fine. You shouldn't have an issue. But what happens is people see you as this stuttering person, and then you go off, you work on your speech, and then they see you as this person who doesn't stutter as much, and they expect that from you for forever. And when you backslide from that, they change around you. You know, it's not on us. It's on the people around us.
But,
they can make our life easier, but they really don't, because they don't understand.
Like just to counter that, because when it comes back to that question about identity, is our identity based on how we perceive ourselves or what other people perceive on us? So like, who determines your identity? Is it you or them?
It should be us, right? But the way that you've given the question out, it's almost as if everyone else is dictating the identity to us. So what happens when we start to work on our speech kind of insinuates what happens to everyone else's perception of us when we start to work on our speech. But surely it's up to us how we feel, because if we allow our identity to be what everyone else thinks of us, or our identity is how everyone is the identity that everyone else is giving us, then it will constantly be changing for the rest of our lives, depending on how well our speech is, what we do, if we go gym, what we do for a living, blah, 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 blah. Because stuttering to me is something that I do. I do it a lot more often than I would like. I do it. But I don't like to think that it's who I am. You know what I mean? I'm not a stutterer. It's just something that I do. It's like I'm not a gym rat. If I go to the gym every day, I go to the gym. It's not who I am. It's just something that I do. You know, so I think if you let everyone else constantly give you the identity, then you're always really going to be under it. You're always going to be under pressure to live towards other people's expectations of you. And that's where the pressure comes in when you've been on that course and your speech is good and then it ain't that good, you're like, oh no, they're going to change their view of me. So I can't be stuttering as much, which will make you stutter even more when you're around those people. So I think your identity has to be yours, and it has to remain consistent regardless of if you're blocking or not. So really, it shouldn't really be stuttering related. We shouldn't let it be that.
Let's not add to that. Has another like view on it. I feel like we live in a shared world. We're not disconnected from each other. We're not like on our own. We live in this shared world. We live with other people, and let's be honest, we are affected by everyone. We are affected by each other. We are affected by the people we love the most. Their opinion matters. Your boss's opinion on you matters, maybe. Like your colleague's opinion, it all matters. So we don't have shields, and we can just like all these emotions and people's opinions and views on us just like hit us and bounce off. They don't. Sometimes they go in deep, and we're humans. We can't. That's the human experience. So I feel like it's all intertangled, but we have to try and have a boundary. Some boundaries where we draw a line when we feel like people are trying to mold us into a certain way, or trying to put their beliefs onto us. But at the end of the day, man, we live in this shared planet and shared universe, and people affect each other. And this is why people who stutter struggle so much, because they're so affected by the outside world. People who don't stutter, that's why they have all this shame. That's why we have all this guilt, because we are being affected by the outside world. If the outside world was fully accepting of people who stutter, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because it would be normal to just speak how we want to speak, but we're not, because we are affected by these people and what they think of us.
But back to that point then, do you think it's more important to understand by yourself who the like as in like what your identity is, than be constantly affected by other people's opinions of you? Because in the end, like, different people will have a different idea of the identity of like person, because based on how many times they interact with you, or like where they meet you. That makes sense. So if they only meet Chris at the gym or at BJJ, then they're gonna consistently associate him with that environment. If they meet you in like work, then they're gonna associate you to programming. But then with your identity is a lot more than that, from your previous jobs, from your like journey here to that career, the whole change, etc. So like, that's why I said it's like the most important thing is to have your own identity like set within yourself, and then other people, they will have a different derivative of that, but then you should always have that kind of a grounded thing there, because if you don't, then people, they'll kind of take you in different ways.
Yeah, so to put it in a slightly different context, I was listening to an interview with the boxer Tony Babello, and he admitted that when he retired from boxing, he didn't know what to do with himself, because boxing was his identity. Being a boxer was his identity. So he struggled a lot after he retired, because he felt like he lost that. So for people who stuttering is their life, when they start working on their speech and realize they are not a stutterer, could they go through similar issues? And if so, is that why sometimes success stories in the stuttering community aren't always seen as positive, because people are scared to make that change and lose who they think they are, just like Tony Bell, who felt like he lost a part of himself when he was no longer a boxer?
Yeah, you know what? I'll keep this nice and short. This happened to me in the program I was on. I was like doing really well, doing all of these things and using these techniques, and I was known for that. The guy who didn't care, did all of these techniques, would speak to anyone, And that was my identity for about a year. Solid. That was me. And I really enjoyed having that because it gave me all of these perks and I had all these people who thought I was cool, you know? But then I started to do things differently. I started to like do my own thing and not use these tools I was given to work on my speech. And I lost all of that. I lost all the community. I lost that identity. And it affected me for a while, right? But at the end of the day, like Ruben was saying, you have to have a core belief in yourself, a core identity that you hold on. Because if you don't, then you will become a slave to this false identity or to another person's belief of how you should be, and that will ruin your life.
So could that be why some people are afraid to make that change because they're afraid to lose a sense of their self?
Yeah, but I think that the trap that you can fall in, like the trap that I was in when you're in this community, everybody knows you for being able to help others with their speech. Everyone knows you for having good speech. If you're not really working on anything else in your life away from the stuttering community, then you can fall into that trap. But when it's just a small part of your life, and going to a course is a once every 6 month thing for you, just to meet up with a few people you haven't seen for a while and just to give yourself a bit of a refresher or something like that, then you're not really ever going to lose anything because you never had anything that was that core to you. But when it's everything that you're doing and you wake up in the morning and all you're doing is receiving calls from people, all you're doing is ringing hotels and asking for rooms you're never going to book and going out making 200 contacts every day. When it's your life, it's like a full-time job, then that is your identity because everyone around you, that's all they know of you. But if you're living your normal life, like if you're going to work every day and you use a technique or you're working on, okay, yesterday I blocked a lot when I spoke to him, so when I speak to him today, I'm going to try and do something different. If it's just part of if you integrate it within your life, then you're not really going to lose anything or gain anything. It's just integrated. But if it's all you're focusing on, then you will.
Yeah, so just to speak on a bit more on what you're saying, if like Chris was saying, yes, for me it was a big part of my identity and it was hard to let it go. But what helped me was having Chris and Ruben at that time. Like they're my friends, right? These two are my friends, and they were back then, and that helped a lot because I had them, like to hold me up in a way while I was losing all of that community. Those friends those people who I thought were my friends weren't really my friends. They were just hooked on my identity.
So was there a sense of sort of imposter syndrome there? Do you think? And that's a question open for everyone. Do you think you've suffered from imposter syndrome when your speech has maybe been strong at times, maybe in the eyes of others, but you've actually been struggling? Do you think there's imposter syndrome there?
Huge for me at some points, yeah. Because at some points in that journey, I was blocking all over the place on certain days, certain weeks, and I was picking up phone calls like, yes, you need to do these techniques, you need to do this, while at the same time I wasn't doing the stuff I was preaching. But that happens a lot, man, in those spaces.
I didn't really have imposter syndrome in that sense because, to be honest, like I can't control what other people think of me. So they can think like, oh, he's fluent or he's improved or that kind of stuff, or he's made a permanent improvement, because I already know, like, look, like I think I've said this in the past, like with this speech thing, this is really an individual journey. We may all be in this room because we are all going through our own individual journey, and it just happens to cross paths now. But at the end of the day, we are going to leave. You're going to go back to Sweden. I'm going to go back to Croydon, Southgate, Plymouth. Yeah, as in like, and the rest of the week, the rest of the month is going to be individual. So the way people think of me, there's no time or bandwidth for me to think, oh my God, like they're going to think I'm this and that. I have no time for that because I'm constantly thinking about me and the next step, etc.
Is that an age thing or is that a starting thing? That's a maturity thing?
Probably because he's the oldest year.
Just about.
Yeah.
Because well, I think it's more because like just from maybe past experiences in different types of things like workplace or in martial arts and all that type of stuff. They teach you to be grounded, to trust your skills, even if things aren't working in training or competition. Just like believe that there is a pathway for you, and it isn't going to be like a straight line. And if like other people think, oh my God, like he's doing really, really well and it's just up and up and up, that's not true in any type of thing that's challenging. There will always be peaks and troughs, and if there isn't, then maybe try something else, because that thing that you're doing, it isn't taking you out of your comfort zone. Yeah, but so that's why I didn't really feel like that was me having imposter syndrome, because I didn't have like that the connection or that I can't think of the actual word, but what other people were thinking about me, that's in their heads. That's not my responsibility.
Yeah. I think for a lot of us, people start. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted, because we tell ourselves because of disability we are different and we're not worthy. Well, for me, I can speak for myself. That's exactly how I felt. And once I was working on my speech, I was getting love and all this community. And once that I lost that because I chose to give that up for something else, yeah, I felt it for a while. But I've transitioned and got real friends. I have now real community. And I think that's what people who start need to focus on. We need to focus on people who love them for who they are, stuttering or not.
Well, they don't have to be restricted to one community or one group of people, even if it's the one they started with. They can still be grateful, they can still have a history with them, but they don't need to be fully committed to that, particularly if it's not working for them at the time. Like I said, we're all doing our own individual thing on our individual journeys, so it's not a one-size-fits-all concept. When it comes to speech and working on your speech, whether it's before you work on your speech or after, it could become your identity either way. It could become your identity for a negative way beforehand if your stutter controls your life. But equally, if then working on your speech controls your life, that could also become your identity. And if you decide to change that, then that could lead to the imposter syndrome. That could lead to more struggle. So it's all about getting that balance right. And Ruben, as you were saying, we need to find our own identities. I think there's no denying that it can be shaped by others. Like I know, since moving here to Plymouth, I act in a different way because of the people I surround myself with. That's not a bad thing. That's because this is my friendship group down here. When I go back home to Wales, I'll act in a slightly different way there, because you don't always have to be the same person as long as you're still being a true, authentic version of yourself. And I think that relates to speech and outside of speech, definitely.
Cool. Thank you, Callum.
Thank you, Callum.